Thank you, Lisa, and good evening to everybody. I'm just thrilled to be here. I want to start by thanking all of you and thanking C-SPAN for being here this evening. It's a very exciting time for me, but I think more importantly for our country. We're here this evening in a very important week, celebrating some very important times in our history, which this book really wants to be a part of, and celebrating a dream of Dr. King's, but also a dream of Susan B. Anthony's, recognized on Monday when we celebrated women's suffrage, a dream of a nation in which none of us would be judged either by the color of our skin or by the number of chromosomes, but by the content of our character and our commitment to equal justice. So this, for me, is a special time to be talking with you about this commitment we all have, and really the commitment of mine to write this book, because I felt that it was an important time in our history, following what Lisa's talked about and the elections we've recently had, to recognize that women really need to forge ahead, to realize that dream of not just freedom, but equal and full participation in our political life. So I started thinking about this book a few years ago, actually after those 18 million cracks in the glass ceiling, and I thought about, well, what is needed here? And I talked to a lot of people about it, and the sort of typical book, I looked at the books that were out there, I went to my local bookstore, and I saw all these books were sort of facts and figures and how to meet deadlines for filing petitions on time or fundraising reports or something like that. There were some wonderful books about community organizing, which is really, we can talk more about this, I hope, a requisite step in this process. But what I didn't see, and I thought, well, somebody can write this book, and then I thought, well, why not me? What I didn't see was a sort of truth-telling, frank, inspirational primer for women who want to be public leaders, who want to be elected officials, who want to be appointed officials. And I thought, well, why not forge ahead? We're at a point in our history when we've had a lot of experience at this. For many of us in this room, we've been at this for decades, and there's a lot of great wisdom to be shared, a lot of lessons to be learned, a lot of stories to be told, a lot of encouragement to be given to our sisters and their brothers who want to help our sisters move along. So I decided on this inspirational book. I thought about, well, what are the attributes of this book? And there are a number of things that came to mind, but I tried to put this in a short version for this evening to share with you. And I really came to the conclusion that there were three primary attributes that I hoped the book would have, and that the stories it would tell and the advice it would share would reflect. And the first one was that book, Skinny Bitch, was an inspiration. A completely different book in a whole different genre, a diet book. And what I thought about as I read it was, to use another sort of cliche, what they say is just do it. If you don't want to be fat, don't eat cupcakes. And I thought, well, okay, I can understand that. I may not be able to apply that, but I think it's true in this context too. If you want a campaign to win, then stop sleeping late. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to be as honest as that, as frank as those authors have been. And the second attribute I thought about was, and this harkens back to the early years for many of us who've been involved in the fight for women's political equality, was an early book called Sisterhood Is Powerful, written by or edited by Robin Morgan. A number of you may remember it. And I thought, well, yes, what's important about that 40 years hence? And what's important to me, and in this kind of a book, is that when we assert that power and when we assert that sisterhood, we win. We win not only for ourselves as individuals, but for women as a group. And that, secondly, was a message I wanted to communicate in this book, a message that I think is terribly important today when there is perhaps at times, I think, too much focus on the individual and her achievement, and not enough on the group and what it takes to succeed, which is group effort. And the third thing I thought about as I kind of was imagining the themes of the book was I remembered a very early and continuing heroine of mine, Shirley Chisholm. And one of the things that Shirley Chisholm said, and I'm paraphrasing here, was that she had been discriminated against more as a woman than as an African American. And that in part she ran for president because she was a woman, because she wanted to make that statement. And I think that what I gathered from that statement by the Congresswoman is that we must understand as women, as we fight in this political sphere, that there will be that ongoing discrimination, but that's no reason to go back in a corner and not try. And in fact, there were some very interesting comments that Chisholm made after she lost, saying, I made a statement, I asserted a set of beliefs, I showed a woman could do it, we have had other women follow her, and so I wanted to communicate that idea as well, that there's no sense in being afraid and holding back. So I concluded that this book would kind of be, to speak colloquially from my hometown of Chicago, it would say what time it is. And it would say what time it is for women who want to be public leaders and influential voices. I want to tell you a little bit more about the book, and I'll read several excerpts, but I wanted to just say briefly about why I felt I was the person to write this book, because I think any number of women have had a great deal of experience and could also write the book. But what I concluded was that having been both a public official for many years and a leader of women's advocacy organizations for my whole adult life, that I understood that, so to speak, insider drill, that once you're in that office where those decisions are made, how that works. But what I also realized at the same time was that I'm really a person who identifies as her heroes the women and the men beating down the door to get inside. And that was the perspective that I wanted to bring, because I think that if we are to move beyond the numbers we now have in Congress, as wonderful as they are, that we have to beat some doors down, and we really have to work hard to encourage women to run. So I thought, well, I'm no longer a public official. I'm no longer running an organization. I continue as an advocate, as I always have been. And so let me take a try at this. The other thing is that as I thought about it, I thought about the women who have remained as heroes and inspirational people for me as I've done my work in this realm. And I realized, in addition to Chisholm, I thought about Golda Meir, I thought about Jane Addams, I thought about Ida B. Wells, and I realized that none of these women ever minced words. None of them shrunk from a fight. And most important, they stayed true to their heart's beat. And I think that that's the other really important piece of why I was impelled to write the book. I want other women, and we all do the best we can. Sometimes we falter, but we do try to stay true to our heart's beat. I want to, I should take this out. I wanted to share with you several excerpts, as I mentioned, but let me just tell you first about how the book is organized. It's a series of lessons intertwined with the advice and inspirational stories of, I interviewed about 30 women from all over the country. I also wrote from the public record about a number of other women, including Secretary of State Clinton. As I put it in the introduction to the book, these women were from Mississippi to Manhattan. That was deliberate. I think it's really important to share the notion with women who dream of public office that there are important offices everywhere. They are not only in D.C., they are not only running big organizations,